right up and get your products over here.
The black market.
If you need some joints, and I'm not referring to that wacky tobacco kind, I'm referring to PVC joints for your prop armatures, well, I've got the right man on the bone phone. Joining me in the black market is Ryan Carlisle of Spider Hill Prop Works. What's going on, Ryan?
Hi, Baker. It's good to be here. Good to talk to you again.
I'm familiar with Spider Hill, and I kind of remember when you started up, and I pretty sure I remember you from on Halloween Forum when you originally started the business, if I'm not mistaken. Seeing you either on that or Haunt Forum, I think that's how I found you originally. Are you a home haunter or a pro haunter, or what's your kind of story?
So I started out as a home haunter, and I did that for several years, starting back in the really early 2000s. So that's kind of where I got started with it. Building props like everybody else, struggling through it, building everything by hand, scrounging pieces together. So at some point, not really sure what started it, but I had the decision that I wanted to start making parts. I think just, I've always built stuff, so I think it was just a matter of wanting to make life easier for myself. And I started to get the idea to, make parts, and started kind of down that path of, making the decision what I wanted to build. Obviously, the spider joints were the first thing I came up with. Designed them, didn't know anything about it, kind of jumped into it with both feet. Had to contract somebody to help me make the molds. I learned how to use CAD, so it was kind of it was a big risk for me. Not knowing much about the market, never done anything like that before, so it was kind of a rocky start, but it worked out pretty well. But I did start out, a lot of my first sale was through someone on Halloween Forum. If you remember Tara, that used to make all the huge foam statues. She made the demon horse, the devil dog.
We were very close through she's not a haunter anymore because she moved to Texas, and she moved out to a ranch in the middle of the hill country in Texas. So she talking about not getting any trick or treaters. I mean, nobody's like going up to walking like a mile to her house from the gate of the ranch. She was the one who helped us start the whole Hauntcast resurrection thing years ago. So me and her go way back. She is very talented, and I'm sad to say that she's not building anything anymore. I appreciated she had the Scary Lady videos on YouTube, which are still there, but yeah, she was great, and I unfortunately because she's kind of out of the scene, we don't communicate much, but so she was one of your first customers, is that right?
Yep, I believe that she might have had one of the first production sets of joints when she built the horse. I'd set in our bases, we had talked, she came to me, and before I think I even had the finished ones in my hand, I think she was the very first person when she built that horse. I think she might have had the very first, production ones that we made. And we're on like a second generation of them now. We've, made some changes. We have mounting bases as well. We make a few, all of that stuff that I sell in there. Those two particular pieces are our own. I have them produced for me locally. So we don't, that's my design. I'm not buying them from someone else. They're all, a lot of the stuff that I build, I have machined. So we started out with the PVC joints and kind of spread out from there, and just slowly, I've been doing this since 2011 officially. And just started, I started to get into animated props. I dabbled in that, but I always kind of try to keep to the same methodology as I've grown, to what we build, how we build it. And it's kind of led me to where I'm at here today.
So did you were playing with CAD at the time, trying to figure out how to make that original spider joint?
Yes.
And did you have like a pretty good rough design, and then you said, okay, I need to bring somebody in to help me figure out how to get this thing perfect, and then okay.
Yeah, so what happened was I didn't really know anything about injection molding. So just like any production, there's regulations, there's things have to be a certain thickness, there's design considerations for making molds. I really didn't know any of that. I was pretty close. I did some reading and just kind of got some general rules, how thick parts should be based on their length and all that. And I just kind of gave myself kind of a rough, study on it, made some designs. And I did bring in a third party who was kind of like an intermediary. They were a design company and had ties to plastic manufacturers. And I kind of used them as the middleman to get me quotes. I didn't have any contacts in the field. So we started out doing it that way. and they got me, got the original molds made and got me, connected to somebody to make them. And things kind of went from there. Since then, we've lost them. We had some, just like you, we went through some periods with supply issues where they were being made. So it ended up, the best thing that happened to me several years ago was that the third party kind of had a falling out with the manufacturer, and things were not moving. We weren't getting parts, and we didn't really know why, because they were keeping us in the dark. So I kind of sent a nasty email one day, and my rep didn't really want to address it, so we kind of sent it to the manufacturer. Well, they responded to me and basically told me, they said, we will be happy to continue this relationship, but we're not doing it with them. You're going to have to come to us. So I'm now using a small family-owned machine shop in, large. They're prototypers. They can do anything, and they're making the parts for me. And it was the best thing that, we've only went forward with that. We went through COVID. I've been doing this since 2011. I've not raised the price of those fittings one time. So they've been, they've treated me fantastic. They can get us parts quickly, so without them, I mean, they've probably been my biggest asset through the whole, through the whole process.
Oh yeah, where I see everything else going up like hundreds of % markup, like over the last year or so, I'm looking at your website and going, man, these prices are still really good. I mean, I'm like, for me, I look at like a kit and I'm like, for $40, I'm like, yeah, once again, look, I know how to do all of the fancy heating the PVC with the heat gun and bending it and, squashing it down and doing it. And I've seen other people say, oh, I make my joints doing this, like where they squash down the ends. But once again, they won't lock into place. Like, I'm sure there are ways around that. But there are times when I can say, hey, this thing is going to be completely static and I could do this without a problem. I could just, bend some of the
use fixed joints.
But there is times when I'm saying, hey, I've got this prop. The bends, I need the bends to be super realistic, and I probably am going to want to tweak them and continually adjust them after I get it set up, because I'm always like looking at things and going, I got to go tweak that. I go screw it. I'm constantly screwing with my props. Where if you have your joints, you pull out that nut driver or whatever, and you can easily tweak those joints and bend them and get them into the right place. And, to me, and I was having this conversation with Derek Young, we're talking about anytime you can spend a couple of extra dollars to cut time and just nonsense out of your build, because we all have a limited amount of time that we can build things. We're working on the weekends usually. Sometimes you can do a little bit during the week. But I try to get as much done in a small window of time as I can. And if I can use one of your joints to save me just a lot of trouble. By the way, I just bought I bought a kit last year for my fisherman creature that I made. And I'm making a second fisherman creature, his little buddy. And I'm building a Cthulhu, which is going to be a massive project that I'm going to be getting into soon. And based on the way of the arm, the way I want to have them bent and squatted down, and I needed to have like joints to be able to do what I needed it to do, and I didn't want to screw around with it for hours on end trying to heat it and spray the water on there and bend it and do all that. Plus,
it gets to cool.
It gets brittle after you do it a couple times. It just gets brittle and will break off anyway. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to buy a couple more kits, not screw around with it. I bought the twin spine because it's a little bit beefier. So I wanted to go with the twin spine.
A little more stable.
Yeah, a little bit more stable. But anyway, so now all of your joints that you make are all based around 1-inch PVC pipe, correct?
Yes, basically everything, all the fittings I pretty much stock on the site are 1 inch. And we've had over the years, I've had the consideration of going back and making other sizes. But to be honest, for Halloween and for most projects, you have to look at it. So to build the thing is to build a mold, to buy a mold is very expensive. That's in this, kind of production, all of your money is up front. So it's really a matter of economics. You have to look at it, and you want to be able to make something that you can sell in volume, because that's the only way it will ever work out. So, if you pay several $1,000s to make a mold and you can only sell 500 pieces a season, it's going to take you a really long time and it's a small part. You're only going to get, you're trying to keep the price of them down. it's hard to justify doing it. And with PVC, the reason I've stuck with the 1 inch is I've done this all my, I've built many things. I mean, I've done a lot of characters over the years. I've helped a lot of people. Anything I found below 1 inch for most characters, even small ones, starts to become really flimsy. So like using half inch, I see people do it and they'll call me and they'll say, hey, I already have these characters built with half inch or 3. I'm like, you could put reducers in them and you could run them. But, my personal thought is that the 1 inch is the minimum you want to use for any of these projects. It's just like the nice midpoint. It's not too big. You can still get pool noodles to fit over it. Yeah. And per foot, when you cut it down to a foot, 2 foot, the size you need to build most normal sized figures, it has its limitations for weight, but it is quite resilient. I mean, it will flex, but we see very little breakage. Very ever does anyone break anything. It happens. I mean, I've done thousands of them. I can tell you a season that anyone comes back and says, hey, I broke a joint. Typically, we'll take care of them. It happens so infrequently that, and most people will even tell me when they call, hey, I it's my fault. I knocked it over. I broke something. It fell. The wind blew it over. I'm really good about it because, I have really good customers. I've been doing it a long time. No one abuses it. So if someone calls me and has a problem, I'm more than happy to step up and help them any way I can. It's just, and that's the one thing I've learned doing this for this time is take care of your customers. And like you, I know a lot of my customers. We've got a ton of repeat people. I supply some vendors that build characters with, kits weekly. I've done some commercial stuff, some attractions. We've done some paintball. We've done a little bit of everything over the years. But it's funny. I can look at a given weekend, I get several orders and I look at it and there's very good chance that at least one of the people in that, I recognize the name that they've bought and I can go back and see, it'll tell me that they've, purchased before. And that really amazes me, that I see so many repeat customers. So, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, and the 1 inch PVC, I totally understand what you're talking about. Is without going overboard and going something even bigger than that. I build this maze in my driveway. It's more of a facade. So basically, there's buckets with Quikrete and a about 7 foot 1 inch PVC pipe stuck in the middle of it, and at the top I use connectors, whether it is the like a 3-way connector, in some areas I use like a 5-way connector, that I noticed that you're now selling, which had I known that I would have bought them from you, and in the future if I need more of those I will buy them. And because those connectors are great, you can't get those at Home Depot. I'm finding those are very kind of special connectors, but they're great for coming to a corner. So I'm using PVC pipes. Across, so basically almost like a 7x9, because that's your average tarp is about a 7x9 foot tarp, like cheap Harbor Freight tarps, and I'll build the whole frame out of 1 inch PVC pipe with the connectors and just zip tie tarps onto it. Throw some army camo netting or some DORP, erosion fabric on there to creep it out, make it a little bit, just with a little bit of lighting. It looks great. It's perfect for Halloween night. Blocks off my driveway, focuses, gets people to come right to me where I have my little scare trap set up and stuff. But the 1 inch PVC is like the sweet spot. It works great for even something like that, which is, you're dealing with a little bit more wind, or, you've got tarps and other things all draped over them, adding a little bit more weight to them. But yeah, I mean, the figures, definitely the 1 inch is probably the way to go. Now, you have, I've also noticed some other unique fittings that I have not discovered on your site, and I'm not sure if they're new within the last year or so, but you have like the slip fittings. Explain those to me.
Yes. So the slip fittings, so most of those construction fittings you talked about, the 3-way L's, the 4-way L's, the 5-ways, and the slip fittings are considered furniture. They're actually considered furniture fittings is what they're categorized as. Obviously, we've repurposed them. So the slip tees and the slip crosses, the difference for them mainly is it allows a pipe to go through that, what they call the slip. Instead of like your normal socket, when you tap it onto a pipe, it's obviously a very static, tight fit, right? It won't move. You tap it on and it's snug. The slip has enough play. There's enough clearance that the 1 inch pipe can go through and turn without any interference. Basically, it acts like a bearing or a bushing, whatever you want to call it. We've been using them for years. We use them on our swaying zombies at the waist. We've used them, I'd found those a long time ago, and I actually found them with the swaying zombie because there were other people building swaying ghouls, and they were doing it a completely different way. Same effect at the end, but they were using like 2 pieces of wood with a wire. I don't know if you've ever seen that setup where they put a wire through the pipe and they have like screws in the wood and like a heavy piece of gauge wire going across, and the spine swiveled on that. Kind of the same effect. So me doing what I do with the PVC and that, I wanted to build one and kind of did a couple in the garage one day, and I built the come up with a design with the with the T's and the crossbar to make the thing rotate. And it kind of hit me like a light bulb. And that was when I saw that. I showed it to some people on the forum, and everybody was like, well, that's crazy. You know, you did it a very simple way. And that was the first animated prop I decided to produce. And I had it bolted to a piece of wood. So then I had to go back in CAD and we started to figure out all the best compact way to do it, make it as small as I could to fit within the waist. So basically what I've tried to do with all of our standing figures is we have a standard size waist plate that we use, and I've tried to engineer it to keep everything within that waist. So when you dress the characters or you're building them, everything's kind of contained within that circle, of the waist plate. So I try to keep everything as compact as possible. That way it's easy to hide it. You don't have like a rod sticking out the back or something. When you turn the guy around, there's a big hump on his back because you're trying to hide the motor or hide the mechanism. So the slip fittings, we actually use the slip T's in our swaying zombie, and we use the slip cross in the Watchmen. And they're fantastic. I sell a ton of those. Those are a lot of people use them for different projects. You have to give them, if you're going to spin them completely, obviously you have to keep them lubricated. But for a rocking motion or anything that moves back and forth or left to right, it's fantastic. It's an easy and inexpensive way to make a moving part. It holds the pipe very firmly. And they're easy enough, back to almost everything we do. If you wear it out or there's a problem, easy to replace. You're not stuck with it. You can always pull it apart, at the end of the season, or if you got to replace something. But historically, that hasn't been an issue. These things have been out there several years running, and I can tell you, the amount of people that ever come to me looking for replacement parts is nil. So they do very well, in the field.
Yeah. I've realized this as we're talking, and I'm like, okay, this is audio. Some people may not have any clue who who Spider Hill Prop Works is and the spider joints that you do. So just try to explain as simply as you can what your spider joints actually, what they do.
Sure. So basically it's a plastic elbow. Let's call it it's an adjustable elbow that has teeth in it, and essentially it allows you to make a union in any 2 pieces of 1-inch PVC, and they adjust it about, I want to say it's about 1.8 or 2 degrees, I believe we figured is the notch. So there's a nut in the center. You loosen them, and you can basically tighten them all the way down. They will tighten about as tight as you can make your elbow. Like if you take your forearm, against your wrist, like you push them together, that's about how tight you can make the joint close. But essentially, it's an adjustable elbow. It has teeth in it. You've used them. They have very fine teeth in them. They are very strong. You will not have those things slip. I will challenge you to make them slip. You'll probably break it before you ever get it to slip. So, but we use them when building figures. We use them they're used in the spine, the shoulders, the elbows, the knees, and the hips. So they give you a pretty high level of flexibility when you're building a standard 6-foot prop, 3-foot prop, whatever, half a prop. We have ground breakers that are just half the body. So a lot of applications.
Yeah. So, so once again, elbows, shoulders, knees, hips, and you can get a full range of motion where you can position your creature or so it's basically, to create a full armature, you're using one piece of PVC pipe to connect all the elbows together, which they can buy a whole kit from you with everything, all the 1-inch piece of PVCs pre-cut, or you can just cut them. You give them the dimensions, and you can just buy your own PVC and cut them, and just buy all the joints, the joint kit, to make a full armature of any type of creature you want to build for your yard, a zombie, whatever, like a fisherman creature, for instance, or a Cthulhu, or whatever your fancy is. Yeah, so it just makes for a very easy way of getting really lifelike, and I think that's one of the problems I do see, and it's not like a problem, but I think as you come up, when you start building and you're a home haunter and you're getting into this, and you're like, oh, I want to build a creature, and they all look very boxy. You know, if they use PVC as an armature, they all look very square and very boxy and very unlifelike. So if you just want to throw something together, you're happy with it, great. But some people like me are constantly looking at things and going, that just doesn't look real enough for me. It's got to look like it's walking, or it's got to have like a little bit of motion in it so it looks like it's moving or it's creeping around the yard even though it's static. So I'm always looking for a way of how do I make this thing look somewhat like it's stopped in motion, and that's where those joints really come into play, where they can help you really dial in, the sway of the arm and the bend of the knees as, your creature might be moving or shambling through your yard or haunt. Or
one of the other things that you touched on too, dimensionally, like the nice thing about this prop building with PVC is it's inexpensive.
Yeah,
that was one of the thoughts when I did this for the home haunters. It's readily available. You don't need any special tools to work with it. You don't need a power saw you're going to cut your fingers off with. You don't need a welder. It's lightweight. It's weatherproof. If you mess up a cut on a pipe, you can just cut another one. And you can go to any Home Depot or Lowe's and buy the pipe. And the other thing is with these frames, when you build them, and as a home haunter, you appreciate this. I did it when I was a home haunter. We did a different theme every year. So it was very likely I built a whole line of, I might have built a character, your fisher, the scenery. And it's a lot of times I didn't reuse it. So I went back and had to tear everything apart in that. And the nice thing is you could technically tear these characters down. You can have them sitting in a chair this year. If you decide he's not going to be sitting in a chair next year and you now want to make him a standing, in the corner, you can just go in and readjust the frame and, change that character without losing all that pipe and throwing it away or whatever. It is able to be repurposed, very easily. So it is nice. You make that investment once if you build it. If you keep it a few years and you decide you now want a Dracula, you can redress it, change him to standing with his arms out now in the corner. Now you got a Dracula. So it was a very big thought for me when I started all this, that when I designed the joints, and one of the things that crossed my head was, I want to build something that has multi-use. I didn't want to go and buy mold to make pumpkins with a mean face on it, because I figured, it's going to look great. Everyone's going to buy one. And then after the first season, everyone's got one of these pumpkins. They're not going to come back and buy any more of them. So I kind of took the other approach, kind of like you said about ease. I try to take the pain out of a lot of stuff, whether it's the animated props, figuring out the dimensions. I do a lot of that. We always give you plans that give you a baseline. I want to take those pinch points out for haunters. I'll give you a place to mount the motor. I'll give you a frame to start with. You can take it from there, but you have the basis to build what you want to build, and you have a sturdy, and an easy way to do that. And that's, I try to use that same logic with everything I do, looking at stuff when I build it and say, well, what would be easier to put this together? Well, bracket on this end of the linkage to mount to the pipe. It's something I just did recently. So that's the way I look at things. I try not to make them too niche that, they only work for one application. I kind of look at them more as hardware, and and I've seen people use them for some crazy stuff. Especially the spider joints. Currently, constantly see stuff out of Halloween that people use regularly for other applications, and that is really good for me. It really helps me on the off season, when things get slow. It's nice to have some of these other companies and other, hobbyists using these things. It kind of keeps things moving, when the Halloween people were, taking a break right after Halloween. So it is nice, we get things like that. We've been out there long enough that there's just, that constant flow, and it's never really dead here. It slows down, but it's already busy. We're halfway to Halloween in this last week, and I've seen a huge uptick. So it's kind of funny. It's like one day someone turns on the switch and all the haunters wake up, and it's funny. It's just, it's crazy how everybody kind of does that.
Halfway to Halloween. Everybody was posting the halfway to Halloween about a week ago, and that gets your ass in gear for a lot of people. Plus, you get all you get conventions. You got the East Coast Haunters Convention. You've got the West Coast Haunters Convention coming up next month. You had Trans World already go by, Fear Con, all these different ones. So yeah, people are starting to get in the building mode. Now, you had something on the site I hadn't seen before, and it looks like it was the spider joint T-knob, and that's for adjusting the nut in the spider joints, which basically replaces you needing a 7/16 nut driver. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we wanted to give people an option, and whether they were using it for a hobbyist, application or for Halloween. We talked about I've seen people that put their display up early and they want to move the figures around, so they'll go out and loosen it. And what's nice is if you put the T-knobs on, like you said, you don't have to get up in the sleeve with a wrench or anything. You can just kind of reach.
Yeah, you have to take the shirt off, take the pants down. I'm going to have to get one of those just because of that, because I realized it was such a pain in the ass for me to try to readjust my fisherman guy last year, because I'd have to take the raincoat off, and then the whole, he had like the fisherman pants, which are like, what are they, like overalls, so you have to kind of undo the snaps and pull the pants down, and
our neighbors already look at us. Our neighbors already look at us funny, and when they see you out there standing in front of your prop with his pants down,
see me on my knees taking the guy's pants down, it's probably not a good, it doesn't go over well with the neighbors. Not a good look. You have a bunch of animated kits now outside of your standard single spine, double spine kits. You have, what do you have? The animated ground. I noticed that you have a little Casa Fair animated groundbreaker kit now. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes, we've got 3 different, body figures. 3 different styles of animated props, and a body is a full body, and then we've got a few. I'd like to call them standalone mechanisms, so they can basically be put inside something behind, for different movements. So we kind of offer, like I said, and then I've got a whole range of motor mounts now, so I really got it all the way down to you can buy something that's turnkey that you just plug in and it goes, or you can buy random pieces if you just, need something to hold your motor, you need a linkage, you need, brackets to bolt it down. So I've tried to cater, every step, I guess, in between there. If you want to build a character and you want the turnkey kit, we can cut the pipe for you and everything and send it out. And you basically, in a half hour, if you've never built one before, it's very easy to assemble. There's, all the hard stuff's done for you. You can spend your time finishing it. It's fun to build. A lot of people enjoy building them. I've seen kids build them, so it's not all the electronics we pre-wire for the controls and everything are plug and play. So there's, it's very easy, even, for someone inexperienced, it's a very easy, build for people.
Yeah. Some people don't, unlike me, have like a ridiculous, workshop that have all kinds of tools and can cut all this stuff up easily. Sometimes they just want to buy the whole kit, and they can spend their time putting the masks on and the head and distressing the clothing and doing all that kind of stuff. You have a little prop power kit. What is that?
So the prop power kit basically comes, we sell it to work with some of our, you can use it with any wiper motor. Essentially, it's everything you need to run a wiper motor powered prop. So it gives you a matched power supply, the speed controller. We give you a power connector for the wiper motor, and we have the wiring harnesses we actually have, which a lot of other vendors don't have. I have made. So I kind of took that whole thing out. So when we send the speed controls out, they're already wired up. So essentially, if you have your own wiper motor, you put the power plug that we supply on your wiper motor, and everything else just plugs in. You can't mess it up. It only plugs in one way. So then it gives you an on-off switch and a variable speed control for any wiper motor powered prop.
Cool.
The nice thing is, Bakers, like I said, everything is in the bag that you need to do it. You don't have to worry, do I get the right power supply? What kind of wire do I need? All that's been done for you. So essentially, and you said about time, you could order all that stuff, but you might have to go to 3 or 4 different vendors to get it. And, in the end, if you're not buying several of them for yourself, it's probably not worth it. And that's why, we keep all that stuff in the shop. So I tried to break it down to put these kits together to look at it as a home hunter, like maybe I got a junkyard wiper motor or something. Now what do I do with it? Well, this would run it. So you could, you don't know a lot about it. This gives you the instructions to hook it up, and you're pretty much off and running in a couple minutes. There's it's very easy.
Yeah. You also offer some prop plans on the site. Are those just free downloads, or
they are free? Yep.
Okay.
On the last, and most of them are to the, basically the ones we include with all of our props. I put them up there like that, so I wanted people to be, I kind of want to be a resource for it. Want them to, if they lose it, or if they want to just download it and try and build their own, great. They're there. They're on the plans page, but I have to do all the plans. That's another thing. I do all the plans for the props. I sit here and same like you, I got to print them all out and do them, and I got to kind of sit back and look at them again and read them and go through them step by step in my head, or build one on the bench and make sure that what I'm handing out is, in fact, step by step. And someone's not going to get halfway through it and hit a spot where they're going to think, well, now what do I do? This doesn't make sense. So. It's a lot of time to bring a new prop out. There's a lot more than just designing the prop and, getting all the hardware together and bringing all those pieces together in a kit are one thing, but then the support, building the instructions, doing the videos. Like you said, it takes, I spend a lot of time doing that. So to bring an animated prop, even a mechanism to market it takes, we have to do prototypes and then it's finding all the hardware that I need and trying to, again, it's always the battle of trying to stay with certain quality parts and keep that price point, at where we're at, and try to keep them. I don't want to have all my mechanisms at one price and then bring one out that's 3 times as much as all the rest. And then it's kind of, sitting there because it's just, it doesn't fit the formula, I guess. We can build more complicated things, but there's a formula there. And I try to very hard to stay within that, within that range.
All right. Do you have anything new coming up in the works?
I don't have anything crazy. I've been busy this past season. So we actually supplied about 2-3 seasons ago. We partnered with Fright Props.
Okay.
We've been selling a lot of stuff through Fright Props, and so much so that after COVID, that happened I think around the beginning of COVID or something like that. I was still doing trade shows, and between doing my stuff and doing the stuff for them, after COVID, I kind of fizzled out and I just really haven't went back to any trade shows or anything. And to be quite honest, it's been busy enough that really hasn't, affected me, and they are very busy. So, they keep me busy too. So basically they're selling, we make a couple things exclusively for them, but mostly they're selling, kits that I sell, which makes sense. We get our wiper motors through them. I've known them for years. They're a great crew. Everybody over there, they're great to work with. So they've been an awesome, company to partner with for me.
Yeah,
but back to your question, mostly I've been working on hardware and different kits. I don't have any big animated props on the plate right now, but I've been refining some of the stuff that we were doing. We brought some different stuff on last year. We started bringing on different color joints, the black bases, expanding on some of the fittings that I carry. I made some new brackets this year, stuff like that, a couple different linkage kits. So stuff that were a little bit easier to put out than, full on kits. But I do plan to get back. I have a couple ideas on the drawing board that I just haven't gotten back to. So probably within, if I don't get to them this season, I'm hoping over the winter or something, maybe I get back and, re-release some kits. Maybe do 1 or 2 more, maybe another. I was thinking of another standalone mechanism and possibly one more animated kit.
All right. Well, to wrap things up, Ryan, tell people where to go to purchase your wares.
You can find us at www.spiderhillpropworks.com.
I'm going now. Heaven help you.
Please like and follow the podcast. Stalk us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Links in the description. And help us by sharing Hauntcast with all your haunted Halloween brethren. Until next time, stay scary.